Welcome to Norwalk Public Library Indian Local Author Celebration. Today we have poetry, thoughts in verse, and we'll begin with each of the poets reading or speaking, and they should introduce themselves. Yes, thank you.
So I'm going to begin. I'm Jessica Cuello, and I'm a poet. And I will be reading from my book, Liar, that won the Barrow Street Book Prize. It was selected by Dorian Luck. And I'm going to stay seated. Limbo. I draw an eye on my notebook, a swirl of ink, I'm not sure whose, but it sees me when my brother can't. He lives with us but died somewhere back in childhood. He won't say how. His limbs move well enough to walk to school and back. I've seen his vacant eye, seen him in the hallway in his same sweatshirt. He won't pronounce my name. He skips the I, he shuts his door. We once were close, walked hand in hand. Pre-language, we shared a bed. My notebook eye is more alive than he. Grain of paper, welt of ink. It sees more than a dead boy. And because he does alive things, like sleep and eat, I can't mourn. My babysitter, Karen B., who was sent to Willard Asylum. There are only 2 photos of me as a child. She took them. She had no child. She had cool cigarettes and a job at the drugstore. She gave me the Crayola box with the built-in sharpener. 400 suitcases were stored in the attic of Willard Asylum for the chronic insane. She joined her twin brother there. She wore her black hair down. A child could admire it. She bought me an Easter basket, a stuffed rabbit whose fur rubbed off. She walked everywhere. She painted circles of blush on her cheeks. Loony, people said so. I mean grown-ups who saw signs, who passed her on our street, before she started to call and say, remember. On the phone she said, remember. Remember the date we killed her brother, forgetting he'd been committed. I took her hand and tagged along like an animal. She was perfect to a child. In 1995, when the asylum closed, an artist took photos of the 400 suitcases. The photos were put online, the contents laid out respectfully. In the open suitcases, belts, pocket knives, Lone Ranger cards, keys, ribbons, shoe polish, mirrors, pills, a fountain pen, bottle of glycerin, a zither, kit of needles, bread ration card, the Gospel of John, a letter. Each suitcase had a name: Lena C., Lillian L., Mary T., Gloria P., Cassie M., Francis T., Marion R., Catherine S., Dimitri Z., Ruby C., Anthony C., FJL, Viola G., Alice T., Carrie L., Karen B., remember. I'm going to read 2 more, and Suzanne, who is the poet next to me, likes this one. I'm reading it for her. Thank you. I nod when the school's visiting doctor asks if I eat 3 meals a day. In my family, you recreate invisible and freeze like a rabbit. You do not cry. God can read your mind. In my family, you lie in the snow and dream how your birth happened, the rough edge of the tabletop, the knuckles of the artist father who paints all night in a disease, then leaves and leaves. No one confesses anything. The black and blue mother scrapes herself together, and into the world comes a baby with her mouth open. In my family, you tame your needs. You bite but don't chew the winter leaves. You drink milk white snow from your mittens. one more. That shirt makes you a whore because it's black. And that's the title. Thank you. It's like one of my 2 funny lines in the whole book.
Does Suzanne like this one too?
Yes.
There you go.
It's my favorite.
I paid for the whore shirt with my own money, bought it at the mall. It was buttoned down and satin to the touch. Who was this whore that had never kissed anyone, not even her mother? Who would not menstruate until she was old enough to leave home, until she had tasted fat, the pleasure of its depth. Whoreness must have started at the sleepovers, when we played hooker, we stripped for each other. No, whoreness started younger, at 3, at 2, at birth, in the womb, whoring with balled fists and floating in the whore sea. When the 11-year-olds played streetwalker, I was the best. What did the best mean? It meant no smile. It was shame in girl form, which was shame's first form. It meant relinquish the body. It meant do not eat in front of others, do not pee in public bathrooms, not even school. It was the body in plain sight, but hidden, the girl's small cocked head in the room of girls.
I'm Suzanne Freshcorn. I'm going to be reading from my 3rd book, just out from Jacklight Press, called Fixed Star. Fixed Star is an interrogation of finding my heritage through the fragments of my family, and it also interrogates the costs and reveals the costs of assimilation. I'm going to start with 2 poems from one of the long sonnet sequences. First one in the book, one of 2 in the book. It's called Cuban Palomita, and these are a series of linked sonnets. Cuban Palomita. Birth cleaved me in half. The sea I grew legs in, now a dissonance, a fixed star. The Atlantic where I summer cannot diminish the dichotomy. This figurine, with its sash cinched by gold leaf, its delicate arm grafted with glue. It's a dinner fiesta I hear on the boardwalk, that green button of memory, an earring tucked into an envelope, bound in a bureau with the scarves. Found in a bureau with the scarves, an imprint of identity, a single gold ball stud, evidence of cultural piercing, a lace dress, a first language, all myths once we moved north. Washed on shore, we lost our heritage. Sometimes it happens when you're standing. Watch yourself. Perhaps it's as effortless as drifting, the soft light of a street lamp on a November morning, taking the edge off the stars. My body as a communist country. Its betrayal totalitarian. Skin dry as parchment, lit by the slightest brush. The scent in our sheets sets off chimes, a measure until you return. The minutes I swallow whole. Castro, you've nothing in Cuba like my desire. My body's capitalism, greedy. It's a slow jam in a darkened room, keeping time with the DJ. It's lyric, the blue light of aging, shadows, desires waking. 10 years from now, we'll wonder at this. My body's exacting power, brooking no opposition. Nascent. The quest brought its own interstellar medium in the end. She was matter between stars in a galaxy of stars. The yoked constellations, capitalist and communist, ran bright on her skin. Fidel, is it cold in Cuba? She is nascent still, because her body is here and she is not. A numinous zephyr lily of love, cloistral and cognizant, laminated to each star. Suzanita is but one stria here. The lathe is the sinew and the cloche terracotta. Entiendo. The royal palms have closed up shop. The next poem I'm going to read is a cento, and a cento is a poem made up from lines of other people's poems. Totally legitimate. It had actual form. It's called Palm Tree Cento. This is not something I've just learned. There was a sphere with dark patches like mountains, and I swear by this stolen image, you should listen to what they are hinting. Over there, evil and good actually have faces. How I would like to believe in tenderness, to know that light falls and fills, often without our knowing. I am not speaking of rose windows. Here, after a meager diet of horizon, is some scenery. All the leaves stuck out their tongues. This next poem I'm going to read is made from a poem that was found in interviews from experiences of Normando Hernandez Gonzalez. He was in 2003, he was like among the 75 Cuban journalists who were arrested in what became known as the Black Spring. Black Spring. I held my breath under the bed, curled like a knot against the wall. They searched cars, they searched everywhere, searched everything. A small incandescent bulb lit 24 hours a day. I always talked. If I had the desire to speak, I spoke. My only sunlight hours, Monday through Friday at noon. All 7 of us remained in solidarity. We began our hunger strike on the 13th of August. They took everything, including the mattress from the bed. All they left me was my underwear. The cell was completely boarded up, a small crack at the top of the door. If I stood on 5 books, I could look out into the prison. There was not an inch of me without a mosquito bite. Small red bumps on every part of my body. I never could sleep in that cell. To get through something like this, you think about your family. I believe that was my wife's saddest experience. She doesn't even like to speak of it, of when they let her see me. I didn't stand up when they did head counts. I wouldn't dress in prisoner's clothes. I never addressed any guard or official by rank. I was beaten with rubber sticks. In Cuba, even to breathe is illegal. To breathe. If you breathe the air and while taking it in, you don't praise the government, you're being unlawful. It's as if the sky and the earth are going to come together and crush you, and no one will notice it's happening. Leaving prison was like being born with experience. Everything I do is motivated by love. There are remnants that remain. I would like to forget, but unfortunately, I cannot forget. And this is how it is. And then one more for you. This is a sonnet from the second sonnet in the sequence of the book. It's called Andalusia. A moment longer, it may not have rubbed off. The bougainvillea's stain, its wine blossom. Rough is the face of Serranía, Verón, and rough, the sand that spills from your palm. Darker than expected, night over the Mediterranean Sea. Strange to you, these hot stars, white like mijas, and their ascent as hard. Had you known, would you still complete the journey? No habla español. Habla inglés, por favor. ¿Qué hora es? Time. We are speaking of time. How long it takes a stain to set, a flower to blossom. More than a morning? The Acanto-inspired columns. And nothing you promise will coax the palomas to follow you home.
I'm Melissa Studdard, and I'm reading from this book, Dear Selection Committee, which is also from Jackleg Press. And the book is conceptualized as if the speaker is applying for a job. So it's divided into sections, which are the application and the interview, and then subsections, which are questions of an interview. The first poem I'm going to read is called My Kind, and the title comes from the Anne Sexton poem, Her Kind. My kind. It's kind of how I've been feeling lately, so it feels appropriate to read today. My life's burning. That's what I mean when they ask how I am and I say fine. Rope dangling, kicking the chair out from under me, fine. Flirting with blades, fine. Looking for Pallas Athena in my pancake, fine. Why would she visit that twerp Telemachus and not me? In my spare time, I'm building a death out of sad songs and leftover microwavable food. I'm building a life out of sad songs, good friends, and leftover microwavable food. It occurs to me that I may be my own soulmate. That's how I ended up in this body alone. But science says the self is not so simple. I'm a mosaic of viruses, bacteria, and likely other people. All of us making decisions together. Group hug. I am my own kind. I'll learn to play the piano like Hélène Grimaud. I'll see blue rising from the notes. I'll be an amateur bird watcher, a volunteer firefighter, a gourmet chef, a great humanitarian. I'll plant a prize-winning garden, grow a pot farm. My hair's on fire. I'm running out of time. Maybe I'll learn to paint, get a cat or dog, something sweet that likes to cuddle and poops outside the house. Something feral and one step from wild. Something that when the moon jumps in the lake, will jump in after, howling in awe of the lake, in awe of the moon, in awe of itself, and every other disappearing thing, my kind. The next poem is called Untitled. And my daughter, when she really loves a poem, she posts it up on her mirror in her bathroom. I can see you moving up. I'll try to speak a little more loudly. She posts it on the mirror in her bathroom, and this is the first one of my poems that ever made it onto her mirror. So I decided to read it. It's called Untitled, and I think the reason she likes it is because I admit how imperfect I am. Okay. My address is nostalgia for things that never happened. I wander in and out of coincidence, dragging a wagon full of unrequited lovers behind me. I visit the infirmary for broken planets and ill poets, where I bandage metaphors and remove stitches from busted couplets. All will be well again, poets restored to their regular neurotic tendencies, free to enter emotional and psychological terrain that would make others run panicked from the landslides inside their own minds. Oh, what we embrace to avoid the life we've been given. Oh, what we embrace to live the life we've been given. Call everything you've ever done untitled. It's the only honest way to create. Generate a catastrophe in your life to sidestep the true catastrophe of your life. Oh, there's a universe with a bell around its neck, purring outside your bedroom door. let it in. Oh, I tried to make this about you, but it's about me, me, me. My awful claws, my electric arch, bats and blue jays hunted from trees. I thought I was good, but I never was. I'm coming home with a bleeding angel between my teeth. Open the door to the heart's door. Imperfection is the only muse, and I am her handmaiden. Please love me anyway. And the next poem is called Inside the Beige Brick House, the Beige Rooms. And this poem is kind of about the work that we do as poets to unearth the things that we don't always want to talk about. Inside the beige brick house, the beige rooms and beige shirted people sit beautiful as unbuttered biscuits, their awful loveliness upon me. They want me drier than wheat, and so still no marbles can roll from my head. I want summer flashing the yard red with begonias. I want ladder-backed woodpeckers knocking at the gables and crepe myrtle blossoms blown down like hot pink cotton in a storm. I'm embarrassing like that, a walking faux pas no one wants to be seen with at the mall. I know compassion like the arms of a cactus. I know the scent of earth revealing her secrets after a much-needed rain. I buried everything they told me to bury. Then I dug it up again. The next poem is called In the House I Built Another House. And I think this one is self-explanatory. In the house I built another house, and that was my body, made of wine, pills, and regret, made of cigarettes and self-blame. Smoke and baby cries leaked from all the windows. The baby's face was a red fist punching nothing. Then the doctor said, pregnant. And I said, I'll never be good enough. And the doctor said, the baby is not yet a baby. And I said, I am the baby. I went home and built another house, one that my husband could not enter, a fortress of withdrawal. He drank for both of us. I started making bones. And I'll read two more. Okay, here's a lighter one for you. This is called When the Drunk Guy Sent an Injured Baby Goldfinch to the Wildlife Rehab by Uber. And you may remember this happened. So, I'll read the title again because it's also the first line of the poem. When the drunk guy sent an injured baby goldfinch to the wildlife rehab by Uber, my kid DM'd me 2 smileys, laughing tears, and the note, this is something you would do. And I don't know if that meant the drunk part or the goldfinch alone in the back seat part, but I think it's possible life may just be God telling a series of knock-knock jokes. So I run to answer the door, and a golden flower blooms in my chest, and I call it laughter, and I delight in how my kid takes time to message me, and a bouquet of silver flowers blooms in my chest, and I call it having a kid who DMs me, and another bouquet of flowers blooms in my chest, and I pluck them and hand them to a homeless man, and they regrow, and I pluck them and hand them to a robin's nest, and they flutter down into the air around me, and I am a flutter among them, dancing on a picnic table at the park. And I send a video of it to everyone I know, and my kid is the first to respond. And I am 1,000 barrels of wine, pouring myself into the world. I will read the final poem, All That's Left. Listen, the afternoon will soon fade into affliction, and we'll have no choice but to challenge gravity. I've been corralling wind just for this. I wear it like a lapel, and when someone pays me a compliment, I play it back to them. Listen, the earth is burning, and all we have left is a plastic Jesus that lived up to its promise to stay intact at any temperature, through any catastrophe. If only I could get a message to the owner of this apocalypse, I'd say, go easier on the advertising. No one likes to see zombies in Louboutin before breakfast. Listen, it's just us here now. Give me your hand. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Barb Jennis. I'm going to be reading from my book, Blinded Birds. It recently won the International Book Award for a poetry chapbook. It's basically, well, I want to first talk about the title, Blinded Birds. Takes its name from a Flemish tradition in which tamed graffinches would compete to repeat their song the highest number of times per hour. And to make them stay very undistracted from the world, their owners would blind them with needles. And the book, which is about 3 generations of women in a family afflicted with depression and addiction, makes a comparison between that tradition and the genetic affliction, the mutation that leads to addiction and also to depression. It's not as happy as although it has a happy ending. I'm going to start with a poem about my mother, who was never formally diagnosed, but she was very clearly a manic depressive. It's called Sorry, she says. The psychic has news from you. She wants to say she's sorry. No explanation offered, but none is needed. I left home with a hope chest full of your fury. You weren't a bad mother, just a sad one, stymied by sorrows genetically gifted to you. You always spoke longingly of death, as if it were on everyone's Christmas list. No matter how many times I heard it, it always meant the same, not enough. My love was a broken boomerang, unable to fell the wolves that chased you. Where is she? I asked, ignoring the obvious, dead. Zipping around the universe, she replies, with her sister. She's very happy. I remember a childhood folk song about a happy wanderer who laughed and sang, Valerie, Valera, Valerie. He wasn't sorry in the least. I joined the group of people on my mother's side of the family and my father's side who became addicts. I was an alcoholic. I'm celebrating 15 years of sobriety this Christmas Eve. But this is a poem called Every Bad Thing That Ever Happened to Me Happened When I Was Drunk. Every bad thing that ever happened to me happened when I was drunk, I'll say in retrospect. But right now I'm 14 and 3 beers into a stolen 6-pack, kissing Teddy Briscoe, whose tongue trembles and frolics after mine, whose saliva is sweet, and who pauses a moment to take off his glasses and bed them in the warm grass beside us. Music from the firehouse teen hop echoes across the lake, and while we kiss, a silent moon saunters across the sky. For the first time in my life, I felt normal. That's what I'll say, what we all say, giving a speech at the AA celebration honoring our first year of sobriety. But for now, it's truth with a capital T, and the awakening reward-o-meter in my brain is setting off alarms, red lights, bells, applause. When my father picks me up at the firehouse hours later, he asks if I stayed out of trouble. I want to tell him the truth. I want to describe the feeling of tumblers falling into place in a safe door, of rockets released at last from gravity's dark hold. When I realized in my adulthood, when I was married and wanted to have a child, I realized I really should probably stop drinking. And this is a poem called How I Quit Drinking for You. Desperate relief on fertility clinic tables, amulets gripped under pillows. When my longing for you yielded only monthly blood, I doubted and raged, cursed the miserly universe. God answered, sent a sign as I staggered from party to car, a just-hatched chick, featherless, pink, tossed from the nest, unnoticed on the sidewalk, a barely discernible crunch of frail calcium twigs. That night, I drank bottle after bottle into the sink's drunken gullet, set about building a nest that wouldn't spill its fragile contents. Imagine my hands, untrembling, able to catch small, falling things. Sadly, not long after I did conceive and had my daughter, sadly, not long after she was born, I relapsed. I wasn't able to produce enough milk to nourish her. She was losing weight, and the pediatrician said, drink beer. And instead of saying, oh, but I shouldn't, I said, okay. So I began, sadly, to drink again. This one is called Alki Mommy. You crawl over me as I'm fixed to the floor, flat as roadkill. You find the scene hilarious, clambering over this immobile mommy log. There is a dark humor to it. You have your little bottle, mommy has hers. You sit and smile a toothless grin as bright as the too loud bulb burning overhead. This was great fun, you seem to say. Let's do it again, Alki Mommy. Not to worry, wee one, not to fret. The lesson has only begun. This poem sort of captures all three of us, my mother, my daughter, and myself. It's called Black Bread. My mother was lovely, I believe. She wore her sadness as a gown. It swirled around her ankles in thick ripples, its bodice cut low across her chest to reveal a dark crevasse between her breasts that fractured straight to her heart. I spent my days alone with her. She fed me black bread made from black flour, kept in a black canister. It tasted like love. She wrote the recipe on my soft skin, instructed me to bake it for my children. You cried the first time I fed you a tiny morsel mixed with something sweet to cloak the afterbite. Like so many things worth having, it takes time to develop a taste for bitterness. You'll see me wear her gown tomorrow and the next day. I keep it hidden in the darkest depths of my closet, only put it on when you and I are alone. Someday, you'll think I'm lovely. Someday, the gown will fit you. Hush now, eat your bread. And I'll read a couple more. They become more hopeful, believe it or not. Well, not this one. My daughter also has the same genetic mutation. It's on the A1 allele, which is a mutation on a dopamine receptor in the brain. And she, over the course of her years in college, became a heroin addict. And this is a poem about the night she came home from college, about to start graduate studies overseas, and overdosed in our house. So it's called Eating Dinner After You Died. And it's after Peter Bruegel's The Fall of Icarus and W.H. Auden's Musée des Beaux-Arts. Just hours ago, I found you ashen and cold on the floor. It's okay. On the floor of your sun-swaddled room, the needle beside you as splendid in design, as lethal in misuse as Icarus's waxed wings. I did not witness your fall from grace, only hurried to a thud, as Daedalus no doubt hearkened to a splash. Such innocent sounds, onomatopoeias, merry in the mouths of children. I lent you lungs full of my half-used breath, swallowing fury and fear like poisoned prayers, waiting for sirens to turn up our street, to turn back time in a miraculous reanimation. Now you sit beside me and sip soup off a spoon with your pink again lips, swallow, stare at the TV, at raging fires, caged children, the shot dead, I'm so sorry, the turned away, then sip, swallow, stare again. Even you, so newly scolded by the sun after aiming for an ecstasy not meant for this earth, your white legs disappearing into deep oblivion, Even you, quite leisurely, turn away from disaster. Did Daedalus learn something about hubris as he watched his son plummet into the laughing sea? And what am I to learn from this echo of error? I crafted your wings from my own blood and ours. Tomorrow, the untroubled world will resume, the plowman will walk dully behind his horse, expensive, delicate ships will hoist their sails, the fisherman will gaze lazily at a tug on his line. Sorry. And only the fish ripped, gasping from the sea, the whipped horse, the scurvy-ridden sailor, the mother who wrestled Thanatos and now faces blame, will glimpse something startling and not turn away. And I'll end with two poems. One is, again, links the three of us, my mother, my daughter, and myself. It's called Triple Helix. This was written after both of our recovery was underway. Her sorrow, my sorrow, your sorrow, a braid of bad things runs long down our backs, tumbles down generations like slinky toys on a stair. She dulled her despair with dirt, sunlight in her eyes, thank you, a garden of growing things. But in winter, she was a dead leaf, tossed and dragged by every feckless wind. You and I opted for year-round solutions to quell the gloom gurgling through our veins. Our pacifiers offered oblivion on demand. Now she is gone, buried in the dirt that once dissipated her darkness. You and I are left to untangle the necklace left behind in her joyless box of jewels. Daughter, let's pry apart the DNA that twists our fates together, separate the triple helix of eye color, childbearing hips, despondency. Let's cut our braids and go bald, brides leaving home for a new village, leaving behind the chattel of the past, carrying only our finest things. And I'll end with the last poem. Thank you for the water. I'll end with the last poem in the collection called Hovenweep, which is a Anasazi, or the Ancient Ones, ruin in southwestern Colorado, where the old ones, the ancient ones, built all sorts of structures into the sides of a sandstone canyon. This is when my daughter and I were both well into our recovery, and it was celebration. Hovenweep. Here the ancient ones farmed the mesa atop the rim of a meandering canyon, carved their homes, their silos, their kivas into the walls of steep sandstone cliffs. You and I creep closer to the edge of the maw, daring to see the crumbled ruins below. Holding hands, sure each will save the other if the ledge gives way under our weight. We smile and take another step and another. Even your father calls us back. Enough. But you and I know this ledge walking well. We've danced on edges of our own making, explored paths of exhilaration no one else could fathom or forgive. Danced alone as all addicts dance, even as our dances devolved into madness. And then you, a damaged daughter, saved me. And then I, a mother damned, saved you. Now, the voice of a park ranger, godlike, calls us back from the precipice. Grousing, we stumble back, hide our relief. We did not really want to see how it ended. Thank you.
Fabulous things. That last poem, each one of your poems really touched.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My name is Nettie Smith. I'm a musician, but a poet in transition. So my first poem from my book, a book of poems, will be The Musicologist. Musicologist, focus, strings attached, lens broke, vision seen from afar, birds high singing, nature harmonizing, heaven agrees, angels applauding. Musicologist, two staves, lines, spaces, pen writing signatures, times, keys, birds flying, humming, sing song high up in the sky. Analyst testing, considering, playing, gathering pieces. Musicologist, place, research, writing, parts printed, persons, applying like scholars, bright scientist, crystal, crypto, historical, human, soundscape, nature, theory, lighting, musicologist, in vogue, model, oh, that's Greek, expanding physical skill study, that's a pro, expert, origin, meaning, art, major, sparkle, tone, modeling, chic, oh, Greek. The next poem is an ocean half filled. An ocean half filled, shaped in a crystal frame, contained in stillness, ambience in blue. Above the surface, motionless, untouched, transparent to see, measured for tasting. Addictive triggers, an experience that's real. A ghost come calling, thirsting for a taste. It's not Lily's brew, that's all, be all he'll do. Stay clear of the ghost, flip the glass upside down, please, don't you worry. Entertain the ghost, the glass is half filled. Ipsy, tipsy, whoa. That just happened to be there. Memory. A memory. Little to remember. Minimized sandstorm of ancient times, strained by the dust of informativeness, shadowed by the forgotten winter dreams. A memory as a small reservoir, forgotten immediacy and intention, engaged by the beauty of existence, tired to remember moment, present. A memory once engaged in motifs, dampened by obstacles impeded vision, existing by neurons from the senses, blinded by the norms life pass in shadow. A memory, failing, demoting fast, suspended in coma, liberations. Wherever the wind blows from its deep past, words spoken carried by waves, vibrating their vibrations. A mind struggles to contain its scheming, failing container suspended, its trend, resting still from mental screams, a vial of sand timed up and down to end. The next poem, I hardly read, but I'll read it for this audience, because it's one of the rarest poems I've read. It's called Ode to a Friend. His wife came home from the hospital. She walked backward, sat down in his office. She held his hand, squeezing it tightly, softly whispered in his ears, crying. Led him into their private quarters. She slowly put his hand on her chest. Can you feel it, dear? Can you? That's it, baby. Baby, can you tell me what it is? Feeling the bump, it's getting much harder. It's worse than the day before. I knew. You didn't know? I kept it from you. It's hurting and spreading all over. Each touch on her breast, she cries out, ouch. At times, he touches her. She kissed him. Reacting to her pain, he held her. Eyes filled with tears, slowly descending. Aching persists, spreading through her chest. Refusing to fall asleep at nights, pain flares like fire under her skin. It never ends. It's causing chaos. It's a family calamity. Agonizing all over and hurting. It is toxic. And like evil torture, the cause is clear to carry this flame. It's a stickler for vexation. Let's begin preparing for the urn. Her time is short on earth, worrying no time to waste. She accepted the date. Carry on with being for the time loaned. Medications prolonging her days. You no longer have a hold on her. Her spirit is free beyond the veil. Things will end better from here onward. Peace followed her, resting at the end. Oh, cancer, you have robbed her of thee. She went home, no more sorrow or pain. In the cavity of his heart and soul, silent echoes of her voice remain. Whole, ode to a friend. I will allow the panel to go. I can't read anymore.
Thank you all. I don't know if anyone has any questions, comments.
You guys were a wonderful audience.
Yeah,
Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you. This is so powerful. All of the poems were just so incredibly powerful.
Thank you.
I actually have one question. When putting together your chapbook or book, did you start with a particular theme in mind, or did you have poems that you said, okay, Matt, I've written this, I've written that, and did the poems lead you then to an arrangement in a chapbook? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Was it,
I can answer.
were they originally random and then put together, stitched together, or did it start off as an idea?
Sure, so to start us, I'll say something. I usually write a lot. I'm not right now because of some things that are going on in my life, but normally I write a poem a day. So I'll simultaneously be working on a book that is a structured book, and also just random poems that I write, what I'm feeling. You know, I give myself the permission to do that. And so I have some things that I write that are really intentionally structured. And then, like the book that I read from today, what happened was when I wrote the title poem, Dear Selection Committee, I felt that it was a really strong poem and that it needed sort of a collection arranged around it. So I started taking some of those random poems that I had been writing and placing them and saying, like, how would these look next to each other? And if I conceptualize it in this way, what will happen? And what I found was that by putting that structure on the poems and pouring them into there, I didn't really read the subject headings today for you, or, you know, the little subheadings, but those inform the poems, and the poems gain like a new sort of power through answering the questions of the interview. So you know, in that case, the structure came afterwards, but there was a defining poem that sort of, it was like when you, like if you find a really great rug and you organize the room around it, you know, it was like the centerpiece, you know. So for me, the answer is both, depending on what it is I'm working on.
Thank you.
For me, it's like I wanted a book of poems, so I didn't really put a particular theme. So I just said, okay, I have all these poems, you know. I titled a book of poems. So I just got all the poems and put them in a book. That's what I did.
I love the analogy of having the rug and then building a room around it. That's pretty much how my books have evolved too, where one poem just really, it's kind of like it triggers, it kicks off a series of poems. So that's great.
Yeah.
I came up with that analogy because of Suzanne. She interviewed me, and yeah, so.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Oh, another one.
Yeah, I had a question about getting published. Do you have a publisher that you work with, or some of you self-published, or what do you do once you have your book together? What do you do with that?
Well, all my books have been with different publishers, and the poetry publishing world is tough because it's mainly through book contests, and you usually have to pay to enter your book, and it's pretty brutal. You can send out for a year. I know someone who told me she sent her book out for 5 years. The three of us are in a press, Jack Lake Press, which does not charge you to submit your book. You can query with a packet of 10 poems from a book with a little description of the book. And that's actually how three of us met. We're pressmates. So that's my book that's forthcoming in the spring is with this press. But it's a tough process.
Yeah.
Do you want to add to that?
Well, yeah, there's the contest way, where a lot of, you know, university presses and small presses have contests every year, and you throw your hat in the ring. There's also open readings, where sometimes you still have to pay a smaller fee, you know, for them to read it. And then there's a couple presses like Jack Lake, where you can just, they don't charge you. You send a sample with your query note, and if they want to see more, they'll ask you for the full manuscript. But it's pretty cutthroat. There are a lot of people out there who like to self-publish, you know? And yeah, the self-publishing is great if you have work that you want to share just with your family or your friends and just, you know, give it away. But unfortunately, it's difficult to get any kind of to rise up or respect in the poetry world if you're self-publishing. Because there's beyond your book, it goes, you know, you get readings and you enter your book in post-publication contests, and it just goes on. And they, you know, and the kind of book, how well your book does helps your next book get published.
It's often good to start with the journals, with individual poems, depending where you are as a poet. But that's a great way to enter the poetry community and the poetry publishing world, is just start reading journals and finding journals that you like and publish a few poems. And that sort of led me to the presses that I liked, because I started finding the journals that published work that I shared an aesthetic with, and I got better at learning where my work fit. Because it takes, I think the poetry publication world takes a little bit of self-education. You have to sort of navigate, there's so many presses, which is the good news. There's, I would say, hundreds of presses, and figuring out where your work fits in, and the poets you want your book next to. And I think self-publishing, as Suzanne said, is fine for sharing, but it does feel really good to be part of a press, and because you also get to meet other poets, and
Having an editor,
yeah.
you know, website, you know, and doing events together.
It's kind of fun.
If I may add, I am self-published. I've always wanted to have my own publishing company and have control over my destiny in terms of the traditional way. That's fine. I love the traditional way. But I took it up on myself to have my own publishing. As a musician, I also do that. I have my own label. So it depends on where you want to go and what you want to accomplish with an established publishing company, or if you just want to do independent, because I do a lot of performances. I incorporate my poetry with my music. December 16th, I'll be doing something down in Norwalk. So it all depends on how you want to take it. If you decide to go the traditional way, yes, it's a huge community that will embrace you. If you try to go my way, you have a lot of work to do on your own.
It's difficult.
You see? So, yeah, and that's going to depend on you, how much you want to get out of you. So it becomes your business now.
Exactly.
You know, it's a business. The publisher, they have a business to run. I have a business to run. So if you want to be controlling your business, then you have to take it from that level. You know, the publisher, the editors, they got a piece of you all the way to the bank.
There's a bank.
Most of the publishers it's a labor of love with poetry presses, because we're taking a lot to the bank.
Our press is, one of the reasons there's many reasons I love our press, but our press is a press that's like a nonprofit. Everybody's working volunteer, no one's getting paid. Any kind of money that my book brings to the press goes into the next person's, you know, work. I love that. That makes me so happy. I do a lot of labor for poetry. I'm an editor. You know, I do a lot of things for poetry that I don't get paid for because I love poetry. No one's making money.
No one's making money.
I want to say too that it doesn't have to be completely mutually exclusive either. You can self-publish some books and publish others on presses. And I remember when I was working on my MFA, this poet, Derek Walcott, came to talk to us, and he won a Nobel Prize for literature, and he told us that he self-published his first book because he just wanted a book, you know, and he wanted it out there, and he didn't want to wait. And he was a young man, and he said, I've got these poems to share. And then over time, he ended up sort of doing a hybrid of some books self-published and some published by presses.